I'm Teresa Gardner, and I'm a professor in the School of Education at Jacksonville State University in Jacksonville, Alabama. I'm happy to have you join me today to discuss a question of how can I improve communication with the parents of my students? Although this is a complex question, let's start with a straightforward point of reference. Parents, they can be our greatest allies or our worst enemies. One way to improve interaction with our students is to develop a positive relationship with their parents. So in this video, we'll discuss how the communication climate you shape in and around your students matters more than you probably. In dealing with parents, it's very important to consider the type of parent that you are communicating with and to adjust your communication style. So let's look at the first type of parent, which is the passive parent. A passive parent just comes to the meeting. They sit there quietly. When you ask if they have questions, no ma'am, you can't gauge whether or not there are questions. You're not able, you leave thinking, I know they had questions and they didn't ask them. Why didn't they ask them? So sometimes with a passive parent, it's important for you to use direct questions where you're soliciting information. You need information, you just have to ask them directly. You may have to look, especially when you're looking at direct questions, for information that only the parent possesses when it comes to their child. You may want to use open-ended questions or ask their opinion about things. That will help the parent to give you more information, but they're going to give you short, just 1 or 2 word responses, and you're not going to be able to they're not going to feel free to relate the information that you need. You may need to ask for developmental info. You can ask for their reactions when you talk about the information that you have. So how do you feel about this? And you may need to try building those direct questions, open-ended questions, and just keep the dialogue going there with a passive parent. You may also have parents who feel intimidated. For those parents we just talked about in the charts, the parents who did not graduate from high school, it's difficult for them to come into a high school when they may not have gone into a high school. They may have quit school when they were 16 years old. They stopped going to school. Could have been several failures, and they may not even have walked through the doors of the high school. This may be their first experience walking into the school. Could be for different reasons, a pattern of failure. Parents are often intimidated by school, by teachers, and they're not going to want to communicate with you as well either. When you're working with an intimidated parent, you want to limit the number of meetings that you have with parents. You try to keep it to the minimal, and you also don't want to have so many people sitting around the table because they find that very intimidating. They won't give you the information that you need. You can perhaps, if the parent is willing and if you have time after school, to go to the parent's home and have the meeting within the home where the parent is in a more comfortable environment. Because we want our parents to feel comfortable and to share the information on the children that we so desperately need. Once again, we have assertive parents. And assertive parents come across as being very strong parents, and teachers are often intimidated by a very assertive parent. They know their rights, and they're going to make sure that their child receives everything that they're supposed to receive. And they may question you as to why you're using certain methods in your teaching. But these parents, they are advocating, and they are strong advocates for their child, and they're to be applauded for being assertive and to making sure that their child's getting an appropriate education. They're not necessarily against the school. They just want to know why you're doing things, and they're going to ask why. So when you're working with an assertive parent, you want to make sure that you're very organized and that you have all of your information and that you're prepared to talk with that parent once you realize that you're working with an assertive parent. Another type of parent, sadly, is the angry parent. You want to be sure that when you have an angry parent that you listen for legitimate concerns. I know sometimes you may hear everything and it's very hard to cut through to what the actual situation or issue is. But if you can calmly listen and try to figure out try to determine the legitimate concerns, you want to express a regard for their concern. You want to ask the parent also who's angry, how can we solve this problem? Or how do you think this issue needs to be solved? Anything that's going to bring them into the conversation to calm down this anger so that they realize that you are actually you are a professional who's wanting their information, who's wanting to work with them. That will calm an angry parent down very quickly. Sometimes you'll have a parent with disabilities. And when you have them, that parent may come in with the frame of reference of having received or experienced special education as a child, which they have a totally different frame of reference, and they're not looking at education as the adult parent, but sometimes they're coming in and they're feeling just the same emotions they felt as a child when they were in school. You may need to provide interpreters. You may need to meet in that parent's home and when you have a parent with the disabilities, many times it's very difficult for them to travel, to come to the school. Health issues prevent them from being able to attend. They want to attend, but they're not able to physically. So in that case, you may want to ask them, is it okay if we meet in your home? I'm more than willing to come and meet with you. That way, we want to develop a communication line with parents, and that's a good way to develop your communication. The next type of parent you may encounter is the mobile parent. I call them mobile parents because they move frequently. And when a parent who moves frequently, they need to know the services that are provided when they come into your school, they stay for a few weeks, and then they're ready to leave. Well, they need to know any services or anything that you've done for their child. You need to make sure that documentation is provided for the parent to take to the next school. You want to make sure that parents have extra sets of forms, report cards, grade level information if the child is receiving special services, an IEP, what the services are, forms that they can carry to the new school to help the new receiving school to identify the services that the child has received and will need to receive. You also want to make sure that parent has the name and the address, the school address, for a contact person for your school. It's very important if the other school needs to contact you, the receiving school. Another type of parent is the culturally diverse, who are non-English speaking, and we need interpreters so if we know that a parent does not speak English, then we need to have an interpreter available. Do not use children, siblings, brothers and sisters to interpret, because many times we're talking about confidential information that perhaps if you bring a child in and they're talking about a younger brothers or sisters, that child really does not need to be aware of certain things that's going on with brothers and sisters. It's a burden, an unnecessary burden that's placed on a child, and we want them to enjoy their childhood and to not be so worried about brothers or sisters, what's going on. So if you want to look at the parents when you are talking with them, not at an interpreter. If you have an interpreter in a meeting, you don't want to look at the interpreter, but you want to look at the parents the whole time long as you're speaking, having the interpreter speak to them. Make sure that any forms that you have are in the parents' language. Learn as much as you can about culturally diverse parents, as much as you can about their culture. Ask for information that's Ask for, if what you have gathered, the information that you have, or things that you've learned, if it's appropriate, if it's accurate, and, try to form a relationship with them. It's very important for culturally diverse parents that they feel comfortable when they come to visit your school. And last, there's the non-custodial parent, and this is always an issue. When parents divorce, very often the custodial parent will tell the teacher that I don't want the other parent to have any information. Well, without a judge's order, schools are caught in between, and I've had to explain to parents that we want both parents to participate, and we want both parents to have the information about their child. We want them to feel included, that they are part of the child's learning. And so they do have a non-custodial parent has the right to be informed about their child's learning and to participate in discussions and decisions. I know sometimes it's very difficult, but if it's at all possible, you need to bring in both parents, even though they're divorced and they may not get along. You may have to meet independently with each parent, but still, we need parents we need their participation. We need both parents. We need them all on board if we're going to educate a child. Lastly, when you're working with parents, make sure that you do remember that you need to walk a mile in their shoes. If we see what they see, if we hear what they hear, if we feel what they're feeling, then maybe we'll all come to an understanding as to why I do what I do, and we won't be judgmental, they won't be judgmental, and they'll send their children to school trusting us and confident in the fact that we are looking after that child's best interests, because that's what it's all about. It's the child. We're both coming together, parents and school. We are joining together. We want a relationship with our parents. We're seeking a relationship with our parents. Every parent. Those who are educated, those who are not educated. We want all of our parents to feel welcomed. Our passive parents, our intimidated parents, our assertive parents, angry parents, we definitely don't want them to leave angry. Our parents with disabilities, our parents who are mobile when they're leaving our school, we want them to leave with a great idea. This was a wonderful school. I hate to leave it. When we're looking at culturally diverse parents, we want to make sure that they feel as though their interests are being considered. And also for those non-custodial. Thank you for watching my video. If you have further questions, there are a few resources that are attached with this video for you to view. If you have any questions, my contact information will be at the end of the video and in the resources. Have a great day, and bye-bye.